welcome those. But hi all, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. My name is Mackenzie. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a statewide organizer with Oregon Food Bank. And this is one of our sessions in our Farm Bill series for the Oregon Community Food Systems Network Policy Skills and Engagement Opportunities Group. Glad that I didn't totally mess that up, but Andrew, yep, great.
And really so glad that was you, Nemi.
Well, we'll have to practice this as a group to really get it down. But yeah, this group is really was created to help us all, folks that are in the network or just really excited and engaged around community food systems, to really build skills, knowledge, confidence, and share opportunities about how to get involved in advocacy and how to get involved in the legislature. So this kind of Farm Bill series came about because the Farm Bill is coming up for reauthorization. And the Farm Bill contains so many things that impact our day-to-day lives and our food system, but is often really hard to kind of navigate and understand. So wanted to hold this series to kind of break down what the Farm Bill is, how it works, how folks can advocate around Farm Bill reauthorization. Yeah, so we had our first series that maybe we can drop in the chat with the Heal Food Alliance folks who kind of took us through Farm Bill 101. And the second series, really excited to have Rachael Ward from Farmers Market Fund and Newell-Ching from Oregon Food Bank joining us to talk about food security as it relates to the Farm Bill. And I won't go too into depth because I don't want to steal either one of y'all's thunder. But yeah, really appreciate you both joining today. And this group is facilitated by Genevieve, Genevieve, Andrew, and myself. But big shout out to Eric Chi, who I see just joined, who used to be part of this group as well. So that's kind of who put this group together. And I'll hand it off to Rachael and Matt to kind of walk us through how the Farm Bill impacts food security. And we are recording today, so just be mindful of that. If you want to change the name on your screen or keep your camera off, just for privacy's sake, totally support that.
All right. Rachael, was the plan for me to go first and then
you go?
So. Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. I remember. So
okay,
great.
Good.
And then and also like I'll make sure to I'll try to go as I'll try to pace it so that we've got make sure we've got enough time for questions and discussion and everything. So hello everybody. Thank you, Mackenzie, for that welcome. I have the wonderful pleasure to get to work with Mackenzie and Jazz and Lindsay, who I see on this call, and just really grateful to be part of the of this space today. My name is Matt Newell-Ching. I am the Senior Policy Manager at Oregon Food Bank. I use he and him pronouns, and I'm going to cover the part of the presentation today around the Farm Bill that has to do particularly with SNAP. And then there's a couple other programs sprinkled in, and then Rachael is going to do a deeper dive on some of the issues more specifically related to community food security, like GovSNP and specifically access to local produce and issues that impact growers that don't fall into the larger, commodity farms space. Is that maybe hopefully that's accurate here. So why don't I go ahead and dive in. I'm going to attempt to share my screen here, so bear with me for just a second while I attempt to do technology. Okay, come on, technology. Okay, can I get a thumbs up that, because I can't actually see, are you looking at a slide that says SNAP in the Farm Bill? Great, okay. So just before I begin, I mean, just want to set the stage that it's a part of the, I've been in the food policy world for a little over 20 years now, but part of the reason why I do this work is really personal. When my parents hit hard times, they were participants in SNAP. Just like about half of people in the United States are. I think that surprises some folks, but it actually doesn't surprise about half of folks, right? And I think one of the things that we're really mindful of is to, like, in all of our work around SNAP, that this is, this is, and I think we're all values aligned, here in this space, but I think it's just really important to say out loud is that, it's not just about bringing access to food. Like obviously that's a major part of it, but part of our work too is to really destigmatize and to ensure and to normalize that asking for help is okay. I think asking for help is an act of courage, and that's it's hard to do. It's hard to apply for SNAP, and it's hard to admit that, hey, I need some help right now. I know there's been times in my life where I've needed help on a various number of things, and it's never easy to do. I always feel better afterward, but it's also never easy to do. And so part of our work is to do that work of destigmatizing, reducing barriers so that our people, our communities can thrive. So really want to focus, zoom in here on the SNAP program. I know, folks, this is not the first time we've had a Farm Bill conversation, and so I'll probably move through some of the just larger like what is Farm Bill right now. This is not like a dedicated like Farm Bill 101 type of thing. My understanding is that y'all both have talked to this and obviously live and breathe much of this, but just to recap, Congress passes a Farm Bill about every 5 years. Sometimes it's every 6 years. It's up for a vote this Congress, and again, Congress's last 2 years, so it's a 23-24 Congress. It technically expires at the end of the month. Put a little LOL there because I've been through like 5 Farm Bills, right? Like in my advocacy journey, and they've never passed it by the air quotes deadline, right? There's usually some kind of extension, and so I don't know, ballpark. I think we can expect sometime next year. Jury's out. Will that be in July? Will it be after elections? I think that we really don't know. But typically it is passed in the year following when it expires. Obviously, things that we pay closest attention to as Oregon Food Bank that are related to the Farm Bill include the SNAP program, the nation's most effective anti-hunger program. The Oregon Food Bank, and we won't talk about this too much in this space, but just for disclosure, and I think a lot of folks know this, we administer what's called the Emergency Food Assistance Program, or TFAP. This is food that ends up at OFB's warehouses and partner agencies. So like not all the cans of food, but a good chunk of the cans of food, and also some frozen and refrigerated fruit as well. Those don't go to all of our 1,400 agencies, but they go to many of them. Farm Bill also authorizes the food distribution on Indian reservations program. And I'll say that's just the official name of the program. I think there's some good things about the program. There are also some things that are very problematic and are legacies of colonialism and systemic racism as well. We'll get into some of the intersections there between FDPIR and SNAP, but it is a program that that we definitely follow and is operated in many of the federally recognized tribes. The GusNet program, and Rachel's going to cover that more, and so I won't go too deep into that, but for anyone that works around Double Up, there's a lot of funding opportunities and opportunities to really strengthen the work around nutrition access. And then, there's a lot of stuff that we won't cover today in the Farm Bill, which I know we all care deeply about, both personally and professionally, but just like I won't go too deep into this in this session, but like the subsidy programs that go toward the bigger commodity farms, right? So rice, wheat, corn, cotton, soybeans. Obviously there's some wheat in Eastern Oregon. There's a little bit of corn, but the reality is most of those subsidies go toward very large farms in the Midwest and the American South, other parts of the West, but don't go to I just find the term specialty crops just kind of bizarre, because it's like this is like food that we grow and eat, and that is healthy and nutritious, and yet that's not where the support for those programs goes. So just recognizing that. There's also titles that deal with rural development, international food aid. There's some sections on animal welfare. Again, just acknowledging that the Farm Bill contains a lot of stuff, and we're not going to be able to cover all that today. But we're very aware that, like, while we're focused on today on SNAP, the Farm Bill impacts us in so many ways. Environmental conservation is another that. So just, I mean, looking at SNAP specifically, right? So 42 million people in the United States, and that's 1 in 8 people in the United States currently lives in a household that participates in SNAP, and so it's a critical program. In Oregon, the ratio is a little bit higher. It's about 1 in 6 families. That's 727,000 people currently. I think one of the reasons why the participation rate is higher in Oregon is because for the last nearly 25 years, Oregon, I think, has really taken measures to reduce barriers to SNAP. I think, whereas, there are still some states that take a more restrictive approach to who can be approved for SNAP. Oregon has taken an approach where we really actively want to enroll people and want to make barriers as low as possible. Now, I'll also say that, like, or the Department of Human Services, I feel, is pretty values aligned with us in terms of, like, wanting to have interpretations of the federal rules that allow for more people to enroll. And it's also true that there are some significant limitations, because there's a limit to what we can do in Oregon because of the way SNAP is written at the federal level, and that's really where the Farm Bill, like, intersects. But I mean, just in terms of, like, we've got 50 years of data that show us that kids who grow up in households that participated in SNAP have better educational outcomes and health outcomes, earn more as adults, and we know that SNAP, just by virtue of this modest benefit, does lift millions of families out of poverty every year. And so we want to recognize that, like, our mission as Oregon Food Bank, our mission is to end hunger and its root causes. Right, and so that means that, and we know that ending hunger we can't do that with food alone. SNAP is a way to put money in people's pockets to purchase the groceries and food that make the most sense for our families. And so we want to recognize that, we hold some multiple truths here, and these multiple truths are that SNAP is incredibly effective at reducing hunger, but that hunger is ultimately caused by systemic inequities. We know that that women are more than 6 in 10 adult SNAP recipients. You look at systemic sexism, cissexism, and we'll get to like transphobia here, but systemic misogyny shows up in who is eligible for SNAP because of income disparities. About 1 in 3 non-elderly adult SNAP recipients was a woman of color in 2020. Over 6 in 10 SNAP households with kids are headed by a single adult, and 92% of families headed by a single adult are headed by women. And we see this very consistently in the data in Oregon. Households led by single moms are more than 3 times likely to experience hunger. Again, these are because of systemic inequities, and so that, but that shows up in who participates in SNAP, because SNAP is an income eligible program. Nearly 3 in 10. There's also yet disparities among the LGBTQ community because of homophobia and transphobia. Nearly 3 in 10 LGBTQ women and non-binary and genderqueer individuals reported that that they or their partner received SNAP benefits in the last year. SNAP also served more than 11 million people nationwide with disabilities. So, like, so many different ways that systemic inequities show up in terms of who is eligible for SNAP. So SNAP is, really in many ways a Band-Aid that is, like, very tailored towards specifically food security. But we also know that we also, in addition to doing this work, right, this is a yes and, we also need to do the work of going upstream and addressing the root causes of why there are these disparities in the first place. So holding all the truths, we also know that SNAP excludes too many people and is also insufficient much of the time. We know that among the people that are excluded for SNAP are many people who are immigrants. This includes folks who are legal permanent residents, participants in DACA, many folks who just fall in the cracks of various categories, people in the process of seeking asylum, many college students, and this is, like, think this goes to the fact that like most people who wrote the SNAP rules in the 1970s honestly had parents who could pay for their colleges, right, and didn't contemplate or that folks that like today we know that like nearly half of community college students experience housing or food insecurity, right, and that's really not contemplated in this sense. It's like, why are we setting up these barriers that make it harder for people who are going to school to earn more to increase their incomes? Like, why are we intentionally limiting the number of people that can access food in those categories? Just makes no sense at all, and yet here we are. Many people struggling to full-time work. We know there are time limits that apply for many folks who do struggle to find full-time work. People participating in the FDPIR program. So this is the food distribution program on Indian reservations. And so one of the things that we think is among the many things we think is wrong and needs to be changed is that if you participate in FDPIR, it's an either or. People have to choose, like, okay, I'm going to participate in the SNAP, or I'm going to have to participate in FDPIR, and that's different than the way the TFAP program works, right? I mean, there's no like if somebody shows up at a food pantry that's affiliated with Oregon Food Bank. You can participate in, you can go to a food pantry and you can access SNAP, and we know that people need both of those things, and yet with the FDPIR program, it's one or the other, and we also don't think that makes any sense. We also know that we hear a lot of time from community members like, hey, like, how in the world, like, I'm not doing all that well, I'm like, but I somehow earn too much money to receive SNAP, and so we know that there are lots of folks that are like right above the cutoff line who need assistance, but for whom the calculations just don't work out to having benefits for folks, and it's maddening for a lot of folks. So that's why, I mean, we need increased benefit amounts, increased funding and access for things like double up food bucks. So just, I mean, kind of just a general statement of principles, and I mean, this is sort of a working set of principles for Oregon Food Bank. It isn't like our end all final, but I mean, just like broadly speaking, right? I mean, like when it comes to SNAP, we believe that more people should qualify for SNAP benefits. We believe that everyone who needs SNAP should get SNAP. We believe that when people receive SNAP, they should be able to afford the foods they want and need. That the process to access SNAP shouldn't be dehumanizing. I mean, that includes making sure that the process of applying is trauma informed, and that anyone should be able to apply in the language that matches their native language. There should be fair food assistance for the U.S. territories. There are disparities in how food assistance works, like, for example, U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and Guam, and that SNAP should also support sovereignty for Native communities. So, like, why is I mean, so just in terms of, and I think folks may know this here, won't spend too much time, but just to underscore, it's a new feature for Oregon this year that we have, and Southwest Washington, if any folks are have ties there. We actually like prior to this year, I think the last time Oregon had representation on the House Agriculture Committee, which is the committee that authorizes the Farm Bill, the last time we had representation on that was around 2010 with Kurt Schrader. So like, and now we've got like 3 members of Congress in the region who will be in those conversations and have pretty outsized influence in how the Farm Bill is written, right? And those 3 are Representative Andrea Salinas, Representative Lori Chavez DeRemer, both from Oregon, and then Representative Glusenkamp Perez, who is from Southwest Washington. They're all 3 their first term members of Congress. Experience in talking with them. I mean, Oregon Food Bank worked a little bit with Rep. Salinas when she was in the Oregon legislature. She was the real champion of the farm worker overtime bill, for example. But I mean, there's the learning curve on SNAP, I think, for all 3 is pretty sharp right now. So we have this opportunity to shape what they're hearing, and we want to make sure that they know what priorities are highest for our communities. And Senator Jeff Merkley is not on the Agriculture Committee, but he's on the Senate Agriculture Appropriations Committee, and over the years has been a real champion on things like summer EBT, which connects families with school-aged kids to additional benefits in the summertime when school is out and folks don't have access to school meals. And we also know that there are these sort of external, like other threats to SNAP that are external to the Farm Bill, right? I mean, during the debt ceiling, I think we were really angry and frustrated that, in the air quotes deal to get legislators back after the debt ceiling, that there was a cut to SNAP in the way that it increased the number of people subject to time limits for SNAP that struggle to find full-time work. That was we found out about that really after the ink had been dried on that agreement, and it was really maddening. So I think we're also in this stance of constant vigilance that, like, while there are opportunities, we think, to increase access to SNAP, I think we also are very much mindful that there are also there are threats. And then one quick thing I'll say on the government shutdown, because I know that's been that's in the news and a lot of folks are wondering right now. We did get clarification from USDA that SNAP benefits will continue through at least through October. Now, I think if we looked at an extended shutdown, we don't know what would happen in November to SNAP, but we do expect SNAP benefits to go out as scheduled, just regular for October. And so it's this kind of instance where especially when we want to center community, we don't want to put out alarm bells for folks, because we want to make sure that, I mean, it feels traumatic when there's like uncertainty. And so at least while there's uncertainty in so many things, at least for SNAP, we think we're good for the month of October, but we'll obviously communicate back when as we continue to hear things. So I do want to wrap up here, but just a few bills that we are really have our eyes on. The Lift the Bar Act. This act would restore access to SNAP for many immigrants. Now, it's not everybody who is excluded due to immigration status, but for folks who are in the legal permanent resident category. The Closing the Meal Gap Act, that would increase benefit levels for all participants. And by the way, I'm gonna link in the chat here a link to a few fact sheets that cover all these bills. And so, and I'm happy to share this presentation with the folks on the call here as well. And I know it's being recorded, but I'm happy to share that out. The EATS Act, which ends the exclusions for college students. The Improving Access to Nutrition Act, which would end time limits. The GusNIP Improvement Act. I know Rachel's got a slide talking through this and some other bills relating to GusNIP and nutrition incentives. And then just one other thing I wanted to share. There's, and I'll put this in the chats as well. This isn't actually going to be part of the Farm Bill, but USDA recently has opened up rulemaking for making potential improvements to programs like FDPIR and the community supplemental, CSFP, the Community Supplemental Food Program. And there's, I'll put in the chat, there's a link to like public comment templates that I think are due like October 12th. And so if you're interested in submitting a comment in solidarity with the folks who are part of the Native Farm Bill Coalition, that would be really, really great. So, and just like kind of one, thing just in terms of like political viability, because I know we've in this space has talked about like Oregon and Food for All as well, just how we think about this, right? Because it's like SNAP is one of these programs where it's like we have to look at what are our opportunities at the federal level and what are our opportunities at the state level. And I share this slide is basically just looking at like how politically viable would a program like Food for All be like at the congressional level. And I mean, like one of the reasons why we are for putting forth an expansive Food for All proposal to the Oregon legislature is because we don't think that's going to be easy at the Oregon legislature. Obviously, we ran a really big campaign this year. I think we thought it was a really effective campaign, but we didn't get across the finish line. Nevertheless, we're going to bring it back, and we're going to keep on pressing there, because we do think that eventually, like it's going to be a matter of when, not if, we pass that. Just to be honest about the political landscape, in Congress right now, like we don't see a pathway where Congress would pass an improvement to SNAP that would be as expansive as Food for All would be, because right, like Food for All, we're looking at like anyone who's excluded like due to immigration status. And just the sad fact of the matter is right now with the Congress that we have and that we're going to likely have for the foreseeable future, we just don't see a pathway. And so that's one of the reasons why we're like looking at Oregon specifically, right? And then that's one of the reasons why we also advocate for additional money for double up food bucks, right? Because we know that like there's a limit to what is going to happen at the federal level. So just like, and I'll share these in the comments as well, we do have a very simple like This is kind of like our low bar, like walk in the door, a petition on the Farm Bill that outlines like the principles. It's like sign on. These messages do go to your legislators. So if you're looking to get involved, I'll put that in the comments here. And so yeah, that's and it's available in English and Spanish. So sorry to if I was talking at hyperspeed there. And if there are questions in the chat, I've missed them. So like reading through right now. Hello, Lindsay. Is there? But any folks have questions about anything we covered just now? And I'll work on getting these links in the chat.
I think that was very clear. And if we can get those links, I can share them out to the working group in email follow-up as well. We can do that. But I think we'll jump to Rachel.
Great. Hello, y'all. Thanks, Matt, for that great overview. Great to see so many familiar faces and some new names as well. You all see my screen okay? Yes. All right. Great. I'm Rachael Ward, she, her pronouns. I'm the executive director of Farmers Market Fund. And I'm going to talk to you about Double Up food bucks, nutrition incentives, and the Farm Bill. And so I'll do a very quick little overview of what FMF is and Double Up food bucks, because I think that almost everybody here has probably heard of it and is familiar, but just in case you haven't, Farmers Market Fund is the nonprofit that administers Double Up food bucks across the state in collaboration with several partners. Our mission is to make healthy, locally grown food more accessible to underserved Oregonians. This is how Double Up food bucks works. Folks at the farmers market, at least, folks come up with their EBT card where SNAP benefits are loaded. They receive, they can swipe their card for any amount and they get SNAP tokens and then a matching number of Double Up food bucks script up to $20 per day. So basically it helps them to stretch their benefits from $20 to $40. And this Double Up food bucks script can be used on fruits and veggies, mushrooms, beans, fresh herbs, and veggie starts at the local farmers market. So we like to say that Double Up is a triple win. It really, helps farmers make more money. It helps families bring home more food, and it keeps money in our local economy. And these are some of the partners that we work with to administer the program. So OFB runs the grocery side of the program. The program in grocery stores looks a little bit different just in terms of how things are redeemed and used. Pacific Northwest CSA Coalition administers the program in CSAs. And then OFMA, or Oregon Farmers Markets Association, helps us with providing technical support to markets to administer the program. So this year, Double Up is in 88 farmers markets, 30 grocery stores, and 65 CSAs, which represent almost all of Oregon's 36 counties. And just wanted to give you a sense of, some of the change, the increase that we've seen. So there was a huge jump in Double Up from 2021 to 2022. We more than doubled what we saw, and a lot of that was due to raising the match cap from $10 to $20. In 2023, we're on track to do close to $1.65 million in Double Up, which is a 24% increase from 2022. And so if we have that same percent increase next year, we'll be looking at $2 million in Double Up sales. So you can quickly see how this program grows and the amount of funding and support that it needs to really expand. And I also just wanted to kind of make a point that, in February of this year, we saw the end of the emergency allotments that gave a lot of folks a higher number or higher amount of SNAP benefits. We also saw inflation happening at the same time. And so this has really created a situation where food budgets are really tight for folks, for lots of different households, and especially for those who are receiving SNAP. They have less money to spend, and food is more expensive. All right, so I'm going to jump into talking about Farm Bill stuff and nutrition incentives. You all have probably seen a pie graph similar to this, just to show you the huge percent of the Farm Bill that comes and is made up of SNAP and nutrition programs. So apologies for the fuzzy pictures, but I wanted to give you a little bit of a history and context around the Gus Schumacher Nutrition Incentive Program, which is the federal funding source for nutrition incentive programs like Double Up. So this started way back in 2008 with the Healthy Incentives pilot. It was a tiny little pilot that gave $4 million for a market in Massachusetts to match 30 cents on the dollar for SNAP. And that pilot was very successful and grew into a much larger federal grant program called FINI, or the Food Insecurity and Nutrition Incentive Program. So we saw, in that 2014 Farm Bill, the $100 million being authorized over 5 years, that there was a one-to-one match, and that really helped a lot of programs across the country to start and get moving, get some federal funding. And then in 2018, they renamed the FINI program to the Gus Schumacher Nutrition Incentive Program after the former USDA Undersecretary of Ag, Gus Schumacher, who was also one of the first people to try nutrition incentive programs in farmers markets. And he was also one of the founders of Wholesome Wave at a national level, which supports nutrition incentive programs across the country. So in 2018 Farm Bill, we saw $250 million budgeted over 5 years for GusNIP, still requiring a one-to-one non-federal match for the nutrition incentive programs. And this also included produce prescription programs at that time. So programs where folks could receive a prescription for fruits and veggies. They've had diet-related illnesses and concerns. So right now, GusNIP is made up of these 4 goals. So, increasing the purchase and consumption of fruits and veggies, reducing individual and household food insecurity, improving health outcomes, and decreasing associated healthcare. As I mentioned, it's made up of both nutrition incentive programs as well as produce prescription programs. And GusNIP really represents the only federal program with dedicated resources for families using SNAP to access fruits and veggies. And so really, in order to benefit more local economies and help more families improve their quality of diet and access to fresh produce, GusNIP really needs to evolve and grow so that it can reach its full potential. We've also seen funding growing for GusNIP over the years. So you can see kind of this dip down and then growth in the last couple of years. There's been a portion of the funding that's gone towards a training and technical assistance center called GusNIP NTAE, or the Nutrition Incentive Hub. And so that's taken a portion of the funds to really try to help folks who are administering the program, support them and support new applicants. In 2021, we saw 34 million go out to 39 grantees in 24 states. We also saw in 2021 some special COVID relief funding, which amounted to about $69 million going to 35 different grantees across the country. So really in 2021, there was this huge influx of money for GusNIP programs during the pandemic. And then in 2022, we saw higher amounts of funding as well, as about $59.4 million for 51 grantees. And we are not sure yet where, we're still waiting on the announcement from 2023 grantees, but we're seeing just this number and amount of funding really growing over time. So overall, from the beginning 2015 to 2022, GusNIP has distributed like almost $330 million for incentive programs and supported almost 300 projects across the country. So it's had a huge impact. And I wanted to show you this map as well to just show you today, 44 out of 50 states have a program that's supported by GusNIP, and 37 of those states have a nutrition incentive program like Double Up that's supported by GusNIP. In Oregon, we have both nutrition incentive and produce prescription grants supported by GusNIP. And there's a great map on the Nutrition Incentive website where you can go to individual states and click and see what programs and the amount of funding that they've received on a regular basis. So we'll talk a little bit about who benefits from GusNIP. So grantees of this program are often nonprofits like Farmers Market Fund. They can be food banks. They may be farm and food focused organizations or health focused organizations. I put food banks in there twice, but they can also be, you know, like clinics or state agencies. So sometimes state SNAP agencies or state public health departments will be the ones running the incentive programs. And then really at the community level, the latest impact report that came out of the Nutrition Incentive Hub showed that about 146,000 people on a monthly basis are reached with incentive programs that are funded through GusNIP. And I keep saying funded through GusNIP because there are incentive programs that exist out there that aren't receiving federal funding as well. So there's still a gap between like what exists and what is being funded. And also some great impact data coming out of that last report showing that folks who participate in incentive programs like Double Up have a higher fruit and veggie intake than the average US adult. So this isn't even the average person receiving SNAP, it's the average person period in our country, seeing higher produce intake. And also we're seeing some of that like dose response relationship. So the longer that folks are participating in nutrition incentive programs, the higher benefits they're seeing, the higher behavior change we're seeing. And so they also did some really interesting reporting around, you know, what do the communities where nutrition incentive programs exist look like? And they found that, you know, on average, about 15% of the population in those communities earn an income below the federal poverty level. Obviously, that's very different depending on what community, what state, what geographic area you're looking at. A lot of places it's a lot higher than 15% of the population having incomes below the federal poverty level, but that's kind of the average across the country. And then of course we know that incentive programs really benefit farmers and our local economies. So they did some economic impact reporting that shows that every $1 of SNAP that's spent on local food with an incentive program generates $3 in economic activity. So over $85 million in economic impact was generated by nutrition incentive sales in 2022 alone. So a huge, huge amount of impact in local communities. The main kind of entity that's holding up or heading nutrition incentive policy work is called ANI, or the Alliance for National Nutrition Incentives, made up of a lot of different stakeholders, both at the national and the regional level. You'll see in Oregon, both Farmers Market Fund and Oregon Food Bank are members of this group. And it's aimed at trying to advance some common priorities for GusNIP. And really focused on fostering some open dialogue and collaboration between programs to identify where there's points of agreement that we can all advocate for. So some of the asks that we're seeing for GusNIP in this Farm Bill, first of all, we want to see increased funding. I think that's pretty obvious. They're asking for at least $350 million a year, which would be $3.5 billion over 10 years. There are some entities that are asking to make GusNIP less restrictive of what nutrition incentives can be used on. So if you're familiar with Double Up, you know that it can only be used on fresh produce and some nuts, some food-producing plants, and some fresh herbs. But there are a lot of folks who want to see it open up to qualify for, or to have a wider amount of eligible products. So looking at prepared foods or dairy or protein sources also being eligible for those matched. And we're seeing that in Oregon. We're seeing a lot of kind of side or add-on incentive programs being created to help to incentivize and match SNAP for purchases other than fruits and veggies. We're also, a big ask for GusNIP is looking at reducing or removing the match requirement for grantees. So right now, I've mentioned a couple of times, there's a 1-to-1 match. So every dollar that we ask for from NIFA for GusNIP, we have to have a matching dollar. And that gets really challenging when you're looking at a program that's like a $4 million program over 2 years. Ensuring that you have $4 million in matching is a really hard thing to do. And that's where we really rely on the state funding that we get. We use that as a direct match for any GusNIP funds that we apply for. And without that state funding, I don't think that the Double Up program would look like it does in Oregon. It would be really challenging to have that match. So there's a lot of folks asking to either reduce that match to a lower percentage or remove it altogether. And then we're also asking to create this new tier of grant funding within GusNIP for programs that are really focused on scaling up statewide. So there's this acknowledgement that nutrition incentive programs have been around for a while. A lot of organizations have been doing this for 10+ years. And so we are kind of reaching this point where if we want to scale to a statewide level, we need some increased funding for those organizations that are ready to do that without competing with the organizations that are just starting incentive programs. So this was a big ask of Annie of the Alliance for National Nutrition Incentives to create this new tier that would provide $3 billion over 5 years for longer standing grants for a larger amount without match so that people could really scale. And we saw a lot of these asks represented in a Farm Bill letter of support for GusNIP that was put together by Annie and then signed by over 630 different farm, food, and health leaders that represented 47 states, DC, and Puerto Rico. So we're seeing a lot of interest in seeing these changes. I wanted to do a quick little plug about EBT machines as well, because that is something that is also funded through the Farm Bill. So in order for a market or a farm to participate in nutrition incentive programs like Double Up, they have to first get authorized to accept SNAP through the Food and Nutrition Service. And they have to select an EBT equipment provider. So right now there's 2 ways that the Farm Bill provides funding to make that process more accessible and affordable for farmers markets and farms. So the first is through state free EBT machine programs. Oregon had one up until a couple of years ago, and it's an opt-in program that funds state SNAP agencies to offer a free EBT machine to eligible farmers and markets. Because it's an opt-in program, a lot of states don't offer it consistently. So that's why we see this disruption, and like Oregon had the program and then they decided not to apply again for whatever reason. And so we're kind of left without a state option for free EBT equipment. And oftentimes, even if states do opt in, they may have outdated equipment options that don't work for certain markets or certain farmers, depending on like Wi-Fi access and connectivity and that sort of thing. So I'll talk in a minute, but a big ask that's going out for EBT machines is making it mandatory for states to offer this program and making it, putting some requirements around like the types of equipment that they have to offer as well. And then the second way that EBT machines are supported through the Farm Bill is through the federal EBT equipment grant program. A lot of folks may have heard of it as called the Market Link program or Total Pay Go or Novadia Group. So Market Link is run by the National Association of Farmers Market Nutrition Programs, I believe, is what their acronym stands for. But they support that grant program to provide free software for accepting EBT through a smart device for markets and farms. And so they work closely with Total Pay Go, who is the processor, or which is the equipment that's run by Novadia Group, which is the processor. So it's a cooperative agreement with FNS that's offered up every few years. And so that's a contract that MarketLink has gotten for the last few years. It in the past has run through Farmers Market Coalition. It's run through some other entities. So it's always kind of changing And we know that there are issues with that federal program as well, in terms of it's not, you have to bring your own device, you have to have a smart device, you have to pay for a data plan on a regular basis. It only lasts for a year or two, and then you have to go back to paying. So imperfect options. All right, I'm going to spend the last few minutes talking about some marker bills that we're really focused on following and supporting related to nutrition incentives. So first is the Local Farms and Food Act. That exists in both houses right now and would really strengthen food systems infrastructure and promote local economic development by simplifying the application process for LAMP grants. So LAMP grants are the Farmers Market Promotion Program, the Local Food Promotion Program. That act is also focused on supporting nutrition incentives and FDNP, or the Farm Direct Nutrition Program, as well as reducing the match for some of the programs like the value-added producer grant. So that's a really important one to follow and encourage your representatives to support. There's the Farmers Market and Food Bank Revitalization Act that increases funding for senior and WIC Farm Direct Nutrition Program. It also increases funding for farmers market infrastructure, and includes some funding for food banks to be sourcing more food locally. So another really important one. The number 3 is the one related to EBT equipment. So it streamlines that application process for farmers to be able to apply for accept several different federal benefit programs at once, instead of having to do multiple applications. So they fill out one application and then they're automatically screened to see if they can accept SNAP or Farm Direct Nutrition Program or WIC, or participate in a GusNIP program all at once. That's what that bill is asking for. And it also ensures that there's wireless or mobile equipment and technology that's available through the state SNAP machine programs. And like I said, ask those states to make that program mandatory, not an opt-in program. The GusNIP Improvement Act is a big one. Right now, Annie is really pushing for Democrats to sign on to this act in the Senate. So if you have Democratic senators, which Oregon has plenty of, reach out to them and ask them to support this act. This would allow GusNIP to scale up by increasing funding to $150 million a year. And it would also reduce match requirements for grantees to 10% instead of a one-to-one match, which would be huge and allow us to really expand double up in our state. There's also the GusNIP Expansion Act, number 4, not to be confused with, or number 5, not to be confused with number 4. The Expansion Act is the House version, basically. And so Annie has really been pushing for representatives to sign on to this in the House. So again, if you have representatives in the House that are Republican, especially, we want to push them to sign on to this. It reduces that match requirement to 20%. It creates some new cooperative agreements to scale nutrition incentive programs statewide. So creates that 3rd tier that I talked about for GusNIP grants, and then prioritizes grants for nutrition incentive programs that work in a variety of retail settings like we do in Oregon. And then the final marker bill is OSNAP, which is a bicameral, bipartisan bill that Annie has really trying to push Democrats to sign on to in the House. It would provide $700 million annually for GusNIP. It eliminates any match requirements. So this is the big hope, I would say. Like, this is the long shot. If we got that passed, it'd be a dream for GusNIP to have $700 million annually. They estimate that having that funding would mean that we could reach 80% of all farmers markets and 60% of all retailers nationally with a nutrition incentive program. So it'd be really a huge game changer. I don't have a lot of faith that we'll get to that point, but we can still advocate for it and hope for it. And I'll make sure this presentation gets shared out so that you can have all these links to the different acts if you want to read into them more. Just a word to plug that your voice matters. There's lots of different ways to get involved. Farm Bill's only every 5 years. So now is the time to advocate for what we want the future of our local food systems to look like. Here's a lot of different ways that you can get involved. Like I said, reach out to your officials, ask them to co-sign or co-sponsor on a marker bill or vocalize their support for it. If you run a farmer's market, invite your representatives to come visit your market and see the incentive program in action. And then this last slide is a bunch of different resources that, again, I'll give you all access to if you want to learn more about different Farm Bill priorities related to nutrition incentives. Okay. Sorry, there's only a couple minutes left.
That was great. Thank you both.
Great.
And so it sounds like, from what Matt was saying, that kind of increasing some of the amounts in SNAP might not happen at the federal level, more at the state legislature level, but this GusNIP advocacy is happening at the federal level and could at least expand that. That is a question to see if I understood some of that correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I think yes, and like I think, like on SNAP, right? I mean, I think what I would be surprised if we saw like new major game-changing investments. I mean, I think like the most ambitious. I mean, like just like Rachel was talking about the Cory Booker, the SNAP bill, right? I mean, I think I mean, like if we could pass like the suite of those things, right? I mean, like that is like the amount of money that would take is one, extremely doable, like objectively, right? I mean, if we we seem to always be able to find money to fight wars, build missiles and things, but not for SNAP. So it's not a matter of can, it's a matter of will, and just being honest about the makeup of this Congress and what it takes to get a bill across the finish line. I mean, I would say that there would be some room for maybe some marginal improvements to SNAP. I mean, I think what I was trying to communicate with that slide is that like particularly about immigrant access, like that's like that is a particularly uphill climb in the United States Congress, and there may be room for improvements in other places. Like college students, like for example, I mean that could be a place. The time limits conversation is very challenging, to have, but there could be opportunities for, for some improvements. But just that, like that one in particular is, I think, why we've focused so much energy on a statewide level rather than a federal level. Rachel, anything you want to add there?
No, that makes total sense. Yes.
This is a chance for questions, but yeah, Mackenzie, do you want to maybe wrap it up for us?
Sure. Just want to do one more scan if there's any other questions folks have. It looked like Matt and Rachel kind of put contact information in the slides as well. So wondering if there's additional questions, if they can reach out. Great. It doesn't look like anything. We'll just want to say thank you to both of you for joining and sharing just like a wealth of knowledge. I know that like I want to get into all of these different bills that you mentioned, and other folks may be feeling the same. So just really appreciate you taking time to share more about SNAP, Double Up, GusNIP, and how all of that is playing out with the Farm Bill now. Just a heads up for folks, if you're interested in continuing on with us in this series, our next series conversation will be about advocacy through the Native Farm Bill Coalition, and we'll have one, maybe two speakers. We'll see, we're still confirming, kind of talking about what that looks like from their perspective, and might have someone joining to talk about what that's looked like in Oregon. So date and time to be determined later, but look for that invitation for October sometime, and appreciate everyone for joining. Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.